In looking at military leadership, one has the challenge of trying to range across the world, and one of the important things about this volume is, like the earlier volume on battles, we're trying for a genuine global range, both in terms of the inclusion of topics and also in terms of who we've asked to write about them. But there's also the challenge of trying to think about the different types of military leadership and what constitutes military leadership. So in terms of the different types, one has the relationship between tactical, operational and strategic leadership, because clearly very different types of leadership are required between the chap who's given 50 men and told he has to take the building or hill over there, which is more heavily defended, and to try and do so with minimal casualties, and the general who's asked to plan at the operational level a complete campaign, or at the strategic level the defeat of an opponent and victory in a complete war. And these very different levels come through repeatedly in the collection, and they show us the way in which military leadership is a very complex but also changing field. You know, if one thinks about it, at one stage it was literally the willingness to charge forward, to risk personal death. Sorry, that was a particularly silly remark. To risk death, and to lead your men, as Alexander the Great, for example, did, or Oliver Cromwell did, or indeed Napoleon. Napoleon is bruised on the chest when he's hit at the siege of Regensburg by a bullet. He could easily have been killed. Nowadays, particularly by the 20th century, major military commanders were very rarely thus positioned or thus at risk. And a different set of qualities are called for, a different set of characteristics. So military leadership changes, the facilities for command and control change. If you were a naval commander in the age of galleys or sail, the extent to which you could command distant operations, or even what you could actually see, was relatively limited. There was only so much that could be communicated in that age. Whereas clearly once you move to radio, you have vastly more speeded up communications and a much greater range. And on land, exactly the same. You move from an age, say the Duke of Wellington at Waterloo, in which messages go, couriers on horseback, with all the risks that entails. You move to an age by, later in that century, you're using the telegraph extensively, as a man like Moltke did, who we write about, for the German Wars of Unification, and then to radio, and then to the modern telecommunications, network-centric world of the GPS system, and instantaneous communication and state-of-the-art understanding of where all units are on the battlefield. So leadership and the command and control constraints within which it operates changed radically during the period that we're thinking about, and we've tried to bring that out in the book. There are, of course, other themes which readers thinking about when they read the book. The relationship between leadership and heroism, the relationship between military leadership and actually leadership in war, in the sense of the wider strategic implications, not only of the armies, but also of whatever one means by the home front. There are the relationships between leadership on land and leadership at sea. So all of those characteristics play a role, and all of them are worth thinking about. And I'd like to commend to you the book. I think it's an interesting book. I can say that safely because I only wrote part of it. So much of it is written by other contributors. And reading them, I'm struck repeatedly the ability in their essays to bring out not just the specifics of the individual generals that they are thinking about, the individual military leaders, but also wider issues about those societies of that period, about the nature of warfare in that period, and about the nature of military leadership across time. So the military leadership book ably complements the book on battles. They can be read separately, they are separate books, but they can also be read together to give one an integrated understanding of war and of how it changed